Ever wonder how ancient cultures thought about survival, especially when it comes to like the cosmos and stuff?
Yeah.
Well, this deep dive, it's going to take us to a really interesting place. We're looking at this podcast episode
Okay.
called A Flash in Time: The Forgotten Knowledge of the Ancients.
Interesting title.
It's a story set on this isolated island, and they rely on, get this, only oral traditions.
Wow, so no written records.
None. But here's the thing, a solar nova, it's about to hit.
Oh, wow. That's a recipe for disaster, right? Especially if they rely entirely on oral traditions.
Exactly. That's what makes it so interesting, this conflict between technology, which they don't really have,
Right.
and this ancient wisdom. The islanders are facing extinction, and the episode, it really makes you think about where resilience really comes from.
Mm.
Is it gadgets, or is it
Yeah.
this knowledge that's been passed down like over centuries?
That's a great point, and I think this tension is really embodied in the main character, Kari. He's torn between trusting in technology and then the ancient knowledge of his ancestors.
Yeah, he's kind of like a symbol for humanity's,
Yeah.
that internal struggle. We've always had it.
Exactly. I mean, on one hand, we have this drive to innovate and create new technologies, but then there's this, like, pull towards the traditions and wisdom of those who came before us. Kari's dilemma really makes you think, are we losing something valuable as we progress?
And it's even stronger when you think about the setting of the episode, right? This island community, they're so connected to their oral traditions. They see the world in a completely different way.
Right. And that's what makes the episode so fascinating. I mean, it really challenges our modern assumptions about what progress is, makes you question whether we've lost touch with something, essential. There's this really powerful scene where Tuki, another character, he actually pleads with Kari to trust the wisdom of their ancestors. They survived similar events before.
That scene, I gotta say, it really got to me too. It felt almost like a wake-up call. Like he wasn't just talking to Kari,
Yeah.
but to all of us.
Yeah, like, hey, you've forgotten where you come from, what your ancestors knew. It's a pretty stark reminder of the heritage that we often just ignore in the face of all these new advancements.
Totally. And then there's that scene with the Elders Council, specifically this ceremony led by Nima. It's beautiful and unsettling at the same time.
Yeah, it's that ceremony. What's really plausible and even chilling is how they depict the signs of the impending nova. The auroras, the animals acting all strange. It makes you wonder, did ancient cultures actually understand these phenomena in ways that we've just completely forgotten?
I love that about A Flash in Time. It blends science fiction with these like possibilities that could actually happen. Like, could there be an Earth resetting cycle? Makes you think twice about all those doomsday scenarios, right?
Well, the concept of an Earth resetting cycle, it actually ties into some real scientific theories. Things like magnetic pole reversals.
Oh yeah, magnetic pole reversals. Remind me what those are and how they connect to what we're talking about.
Sure, so magnetic pole reversals are basically, well, when the Earth's magnetic field flips, north and south poles, they switch places.
And that's happened before.
Many times throughout Earth's history, and they can have a huge impact. Disrupt navigation, expose us to radiation from space.
So are you saying that a solar nova, like the one in A Flash in Time, could actually cause something like a pole reversal?
Yeah, not necessarily a direct cause, but the episode uses the nova as a way to explore these larger cycles of change that our planet goes through. I mean, it's a fictional story, obviously, but it raises questions about just how vulnerable we are to, well, events in space.
It really makes you appreciate how resilient those who came before us really were. They face all these threats without, well, any of the technology that we just take for granted.
Right, and that kind of brings us back to Kari's big dilemma. Do you think he'll be able to reconcile his modern understanding with the ancestral teachings?
That's the big question. Can he bridge that gap? And more importantly, can we? The episode seems to say that finding harmony between these two ways of knowing, it's essential for survival. But how do we actually do that?
That's something we'll explore a bit further, but I think it's worth pointing out that there are already examples of this happening right now. Look at the growing movement towards sustainable living.
Oh, you mean those tiny house communities or the permaculture farms, the things you always read about?
Exactly. These movements are often rooted in, well, a desire to reconnect with nature, live in a way that's more in balance with the earth.
It's interesting because it's like modern versions of ancient wisdom. Our ancestors, they lived sustainably because they had to. Now it's almost like we're rediscovering those practices to deal with climate change and other, well, challenges that we face.
That's a great point. We often think of progress as this straight line, always forward, but maybe it's more of a cycle. Maybe to move forward, we need to look back.
Okay, now I'm really intrigued. So we have this fictional story about survival, technology, tradition. It's complex. But how does this all connect to, the listener? Where do you see this tension playing out in your own life?
Yeah.
What's the value of ancient wisdom in the world today?
Those are the key questions. And while we unpack those, I want to leave you with this. Think about the stories, the traditions that have been passed down in your own family, your culture. Do those stories have any insights that are relevant to the challenges we face today?
It's a great question to think about. And we'll be back to delve deeper into the episode and explore those connections to your own life.
It's funny how these echoes of ancient wisdom, they pop up in our lives all the time.
Yeah. We were just saying that about the sustainable living movement. Like people are, I don't know, searching for something more, a deeper connection.
Exactly. And it goes beyond just those movements. Think about all the interest in herbal remedies these days, or mindfulness. Even farmers markets are getting more and more popular.
True, true. It does seem like people are questioning like mass production and stuff, looking for things that fit their values better.
It's almost like we're realizing maybe our ancestors were onto something with their way of life. Remember we were talking about composting and solar energy before?
Oh yeah, how those are ancient techniques basically.
Right.
But now they're like the solution for sustainability.
Exactly. And it's not just about being practical, is it? There's this deeper connection to the earth, a sense of responsibility that comes with these practices. We're part of the natural world, not separate from it.
This reminds me of something I read about indigenous knowledge. Some communities, they've kept these traditions alive for centuries. And now, scientists, policymakers, they're realizing how valuable these insights are, especially for things like conservation and climate change.
It is humbling, isn't it, that the answers we need might not be in some fancy new tech, but in the wisdom that's been passed down for, well, who knows how long.
So all this talk about ancient wisdom, modern solutions, it makes me wonder, how can we actually use these insights in our daily lives?
Well, I think we can start by, being more aware of what we buy. Do we really need that new gadget? Or is it just hype? Can we find products that are made ethically and sustainably?
It's about being intentional, right? Thinking about the impact of what we do on the environment and everyone around us.
Exactly. And beyond that, I think it's about being curious, being open to different ways of seeing the world, learning from those who came before us, those who lived closer to nature.
So it's not about rejecting technology, but finding a balance.
Yes, that's it. We use the power of technology, but we also respect the wisdom of our heritage. Progress doesn't always mean leaving the past behind. Sometimes it means rediscovering what we've lost.
A flash in time. It really reflects our struggles, doesn't it? We're always getting hit with new info, new gadgets. It's overwhelming sometimes.
It is, and it's so easy to just get swept up in it all, forget to look back, connect with our roots.
But this deep dive, it shows how important that balance is.
Yes.
What stories, what traditions, what wisdom have you inherited? How can you use that in your own life?
Those are powerful questions. And what's so fascinating is that the themes in A Flash in Time, Survival, Community, balancing old and new knowledge, those are timeless. It's like those who came before us are whispering to us, guiding us.
And that brings us back to the episode. This story, this solar nova, it's about way more than just that. It's about how we balance technology and the wisdom of the past.
Exactly. And the episode asks, how can we each strike that balance? How can we use technology and respect those who came before us?
It's a question we all have to answer. There's no right answer for everyone. But maybe it's the journey that matters. Thinking about our heritage, listening to those whispers, and weaving those insights into our lives.
Maybe that's how we create a future that's both innovative and sustainable, rooted in the past, but looking to the stars. So, as we wrap up, here's a thought. What will you do today to honor your ancestors and build a better future for everyone?
That's a great question. Actually, I have a story about that.
Mhm.
It's funny you should ask that. This conversation, it made me think about my grandmother. She used to tell me stories about growing up on a farm. And she talked about how they used everything. Didn't waste a thing. It wasn't like some trendy zero waste thing. It was just how they lived.
Right.
And it wasn't until recently, with all this talk about climate change and all that, that it like clicked. Her stories, they were full of wisdom.
It is amazing how those simple stories from our past, they can hold such I don't know, profound lessons, you
Mm.
know? They give us a glimpse into a way of life that was just more connected to nature, more in tune with things.
Yeah, like we've been so busy with progress and all these new inventions that we forgot some basic stuff about how to, like, actually live on this planet.
And it's not just about the environment, is it? Those stories, they often teach us about community, resilience, how to be resourceful, which are, well, maybe more important now than ever.
It's true. Think about the stories you've heard, in your own family. What do they teach you about facing tough times, getting through challenges, or even just living a good life?
Those stories, they're like a treasure chest, full of wisdom just waiting for us to find it. And it's so interesting how those old themes, survival, community, finding the balance between the old ways and the new, they still matter today. It's almost like our ancestors are talking to us,
Yeah.
giving us advice.
And that brings us back to a flash in time, right? This story, this solar nova, it started a conversation about something much bigger. How do we balance all this technology with the wisdom we've inherited?
Exactly. And the episode asks us, like, how do we find that balance in our own lives? How do we use all this new stuff, but still honor the people who came before us?
It's a tough question.
Yeah.
And there's no one answer, right?
Yeah.
But maybe it's the searching that matters. Thinking about where we come from, listening to those, I don't know, those echoes from the past, trying to bring that wisdom into our lives today.
Maybe that's the key to creating a future that, well, that works. A future that's both innovative and sustainable, rooted in history, but looking ahead. So, to wrap up this deep dive, we'll leave you with this thought. What will you do today to honor your ancestors? What will you do to help build a better future for everyone?